The Lifestylist, episode 173, featuring Amp Coil.
I'm Luke Story, a former celebrity fashion stylist and founder of School of Style. For the past 20 years, I've been relentlessly dedicated to my deepest passion, designing the ultimate lifestyle based on the most powerful principles of health and spirituality. The Lifestylist Podcast is a show dedicated to sharing my discoveries and the experts behind them with you. So, if you listen to the show that I talk a lot about keeping your environment toxin-free, right? And the most important part of your house to keep toxin-free is where? Your bedroom, obviously, right? So I've searched the world over to find the best organic bedding. I'm not talking about the stuff they sell at Target and West Elm. I mean, God bless them, at least they're trying, but it's really not legit. So I found this company called Pure, and those are the sheets and bedding that I'm currently using now. They're organic, pesticide-free, and non-GMO. They're also super down with fair trade, social equity, environmental and social sustainability, and they're just very transparent. You can find out anything you want to know about their product. They are no secrets, completely open. And a lot of companies that sell bedding are not. Try getting them on the phone and grilling them about the chemicals they use. They are not going to tell you anything. Pure is legit. I'm 100% behind them, and I love sleeping on their sheets. So go to alterapure.com. That's ALTERRAPURE, alterapure.com. And even better yet, of course, I got you hooked up with a discount. The discount code is Lifestylist. Enter that at checkout and you will save a cool 15%. Their stuff is already very affordable for the level of quality that they're providing, but you're going to save an extra 15% using the code Lifestylist at alterapure.com. Check it out. Today's show is brought to you by Four Sigmatic. Now, you guys know I'm always talking about their medicinal mushroom elixirs because I take them all the time. I'm super addicted to them. But now they've got a couple other products that I'm really into. They've got a decaf coffee for when I don't feel like freaking out on caffeine. And then they have a regular coffee, but not just coffee. Both of them are infused with medicinal mushrooms. So it's a mushroom coffee. They're fantastic. They've also got some matcha drinks like the matcha with lion's mane. And the thing that's cool about the Four Sigmatic drinks is they're totally organic. They're super powerful herbs and superfoods and mushrooms, but they're really easy to use. That's the issue I've had, trying to be healthy and making myself some cool drinks, is that it's kind of a pain in the ass and I have to open up all these different containers and it's a big project. Their products come in these little packets. You just pop them open. They're very portable. I take them on the plane. I take them on trips. I keep them in my bag, in my car. I kind of have them all over the house. And I can just use them whenever I want. So Four Sigmatic, one of my favorite companies. If you want to check them out, I highly recommend that you do. To do that, you go to foursigmatic.com. And like all of my sponsors, they offer a sweet discount to the listeners. If you use the code LukeStory, you will save 15% off your order, which is a pretty good deal. So go to foursigmatic.com, enter the code LukeStory, and save 15%. Check it out. What's happening? I'm Luke Story coming at you from sunny Southern California. So grateful to be here. If you're new to the show, wipe the mud off your boots and come on in and have a seat. If you've been here before, you know how we roll. Get comfortable. We're about to take a deep dive into all things parasites, mold, yeast, heavy metals, bacteria, viruses, fungi. Is that how you say it? Fungi? Fungus. There's a fungus among us. We got to get rid of it. Lyme disease, autoimmune, co-infections, all this nastiness that can go on in the human body when we become out of balance. We have two guests today, two for the price of one. Well, the price is free in this particular case. We've got, for a return visit, Mr. Aaron Bigelow, who's the co-founder of Health Evolution Tech Incorporated, a California-based self-funded tech startup that developed the Amp Coil device. Second guest is Dr. Deborah Drake, a retired Canadian doctor with 30 years of experience in health-related fields. And I've had Aaron on the show before on episode 98, where we talked about how he and his family healed Lyme disease using the AMP Coil and Biofeedback and PMF and all this stuff. So you definitely want to go back and check that out. And I just want to warn you in this episode, I think I was so excited to interview Dr. Drake because I've seen her a couple of times. The conversation was largely dominated by Deborah first and foremost, and then probably secondarily by yours truly. And Aaron barely got a word in edgewise. So if you're listening to this and you're like, this is weird, the reason why is because Aaron kind of wanted to let us just go off because he was already on a full-on episode with his wife, Geneva. As I said, it was number 98. So I definitely encourage you to go back and get to know Aaron and his story because it is not only inspirational, but it is very informative and very hopeful, especially if you're someone that's dealing with Lyme or you know someone that has Lyme, which I personally am. You're going to hear about that in the episode. So that's what's up with the two guests. This was recorded in Lake Tahoe. I went up to the AMP Coil Summit for my second year in a row. It was recorded in the living room of my friend Brian Chaplin, who definitely deserves a shout out because I go up there and fill his his lovely house full of equipment. And I'm like, yeah, so you can't come home because I'm recording. You know, I literally just take the place over because that's how I roll. You know, I do YouTube videos, Facebook Live, Instagram Live. By the way, if you want to see the live recordings of behind the scenes as I do these episodes, definitely follow me on Instagram. It's @LukeStory, STOREY. Join the Facebook group. That's the Lifestylist Podcast Facebook group. And then just know that 99.9% of the time, I also record videos for this podcast that you can watch on YouTube. So there you go. But let's go ahead and give Brian a plug too, not just my own damn social media. Brian's got a company called Medicine Box, and he's also been on the show actually talking about the cannabis industry because that's what Medicine Box does, and they do it well. Now you have to get their stuff at a dispensary legally because it's true cannabis and CBD, so not hemp, you know what I mean? Like that kind of non-weed health product that's become very popular. So Brian's an expert at all things cannabis. So if you're listening to this, Brian, dude, thank you so much for letting me devastate your living room. Okay, so without further ado, here's what we talk about in this episode. Ready for the drum roll, please? Music and medicine together at last. How vibrating with the divine symphony that every cell in your body creates can restore, rejuvenate, and regenerate. Why healing Lyme requires getting down to the brain cell level and getting past the blood-brain barrier, and why most treatments fail because they're unable to do that one thing. How the AMP Coil builds on Nikola Tesla's groundbreaking and underappreciated work on energy, frequency, and vibration. The mind-boggling number of bugs in your body outnumbering your cells 10 to 1. How you can have the best meditation of your life using PEMF and biofeedback. Using your voice and biofeedback to pinpoint exactly what your body needs. How the moon affects parasites, which can then affect your physical and mental health. It's one of the reasons, I'm just going to give you a spoiler here, that people go so nuts on the full moon. It's because the parasites are going nuts. You're going to trip, you guys, when you hear Dr. Drake break all this down. It's complete madness. It's amazing, honestly. The fascinating way that nature has been shaped to create plants that serve as medicine for almost any disease. How vaccines can damage your body even as an adult, dealing with mercury, lead, arsenic, and other toxic heavy metals that build up in your body and cause physical and mental distress, shifting the paradigm from disease to self-care. And then we talk about Wellness for Humanity, the nonprofit that brings this amazing technology to the masses to eradicate Lyme and other autoimmune issues. And heads up on that note, we've got a special bonus show this Friday which is based on Wellness for Humanity. And it's the first show I've done about a nonprofit. You know, I haven't really locked into a charitable organization that was a match for the show, or I don't know why it doesn't happen anyway. But this is really close to my heart because, as I've talked about many times, my mom has had Lyme disease forever, and it's just a horrific thing. So we're working with her now with an AMP Coil, and I'm hopeful about that. I'm pretty sure we talk about that in the episode. So, you know, there are many diseases that one could be a champion for healing, and Lyme just happens to be mine. So this Friday, we've got a bonus show with Arthur Franklin and Jackie Nerlinger. And so you can check that out. And then also, I want to let you know what's coming up next Tuesday, back to our regular programming. We've got episode 175 with Carly Stein. And that is a super dope episode because we talk all about bees, all things royal jelly, what's it called? Propolis, magical stuff that bees make. the bee industry, what they do for the environment, how they pollinate our food. It is an insanely cool episode. I really enjoyed that. So that's next Tuesday, Dr. Carly Stein. If you don't want to miss Friday's bonus show with Wellness for Humanity or the next show after that about bees, all you have to do is just click subscribe. This is super easy, guys. Reach down to your device, your computer, whatever you're listening to this on safely without wrecking your car, if you're in a car. Let's do a guided meditation while you drive. No, just kidding. But seriously, reach down on your phone, click subscribe. And that way, every week, this magical thing happens where each and every episode is uploaded to your phone or computer, or whatever device you're using. It's pretty badass. So that's what we've got going on. Man, it's been a great year. I'm creeping up on those 2 million downloads. I really appreciate the support. I'm seeing people on social reposting the show like crazy, and it means a lot. You know, that goal is, I don't know, it's just an arbitrary goal. 2 million is a nice number. And I'm almost there at the time of recording this particular intro. I think I'm at 1.9 or something like that as of today. And so, yeah, if you could really help share this show, it would be very supportive to me, to our guests, to our future guests, and really help me put this podcast on the map. You know, I went today and did the Wim Hof workshop in LA. And I had a great time. I love Wim Hof. It was, I think, the 4th one I've done. And I love breathing and I love ice baths. So I got down. But what was really cool is I had so many people come up and be like, hey, Luke, the Lifestylist podcast. And it was like, cool, man. I talked to a couple people specifically about some issues that they've been dealing with that were solved, at least in part, because of their listening to this here show. And that, my friends, makes life worth living. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for helping me reach the goal. You're in this with me. If you're a regular listener, you know how we do it. I really value your ears. I value your attention. I appreciate you. And as I said earlier, if you're new to the show, man, welcome. I think that we have a nice balance of health and spirituality, the physical and the metaphysical, because those are the things I'm really into. So without further ado, my friends, let's learn about these bugs in our body with Aaron Bigelow and Dr. Deborah Drake. Welcome to the Lifestylist podcast, you two.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, great to see you again,
my friend.
Yeah, great to see you, Aaron. I'm so excited. We got Dr. Deborah Drake here, you guys. This woman is a wealth of information, and I know we don't have as much time as I would like to. You guys just finished the Amp Coil Summit up here in Lake Tahoe. I'm sure you're both kind of smoked from doing that, but like listening, I'm gonna have to find a way to get you on the show again. I already know, because you are a wealth of information and you have a lot to share. So
I'll try to keep it brief.
We'll cover as much as we can today, but I already want to steal you away next time you're in the United States. You live in Canada, right?
I do.
Yeah, so we're gonna do more, but I'm really excited that you were able to step in. Unfortunately, Aaron's daughter was in an accident, so Geneva couldn't join us. So you're here, and I'm obviously not glad your daughter has a broken arm, but it is fortuitous podcast-wise that I have you two.
She's in surgery as we speak.
Oh, is she?
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. Well, we'll be sending good energy to her.
Well, luckily we have this on the backside.
For sure. For sure.
That's how actually PEMF was first invented, was for fractures. In fact, it was the first FDA approval of such a treatment, and then it's gone broad and wide, and now we've brought it actually into the musical industry.
Well, it's funny. That was toward the end of my questions. I wanted to get into a little of the, might as well just do it now. By the way, before I forget, those of you that are listening, you'll want to go back and listen to the episode we did last year that was more focused, as I said, on Lyme and the Amp Coil and its application for that. And I'll figure out the episode number and do it in the intro. But when I tell people about the Amp Coil, which is quite often because I'm obsessed with this device, they always say, oh, I hurt my knee. Does it work for that PEMF? That's what everyone associates it with. And they use, PEMF on horses that are lame and injure themselves and get them back up to speed. There's a device a lot of people use called, I can't remember the name of it, but it's 2 giant magnets, and you basically sandwich your knee or elbow or whatever part of you is broken on it. So is there an application with the Amp Coil for injuries and things like that?
Most certainly. The Amp Coil is built on all the building blocks of everything. So the building blocks of nutrition, the building blocks of organs, the building blocks of detoxification of metals and microbes. But once you've actually cleaned the body, the whole second half of the Amp Coil's Better Guide Journeys is on restoration, rejuvenation, regeneration. So you can work on cleaning out the stuff that's bothering you. Most people don't realize that sports injuries are really big in the industry. I mean, sports kids are very active, and you don't want them to go on to injuries that are, protracted. But we even have athletes who are pros, and if you miss a game, they could be missing $1 million game. They can't afford their, ligaments to be torn for a season. So the actual bioresonance musical notes of ligaments and cartilage and connective tissues, and the sulfur that holds it together, and all of the nerves that run to it, the muscles and the spinal alignment. When you align each component of something, the whole shack is strong. If you're missing the cross ties, you're fumbling. So the amp coil builds you up layer by mineral, by water, by organ, by electricity, the plumbing. We work on the whole tank. We call it the aquarium. Mm-hmm. We're cleaning your aquarium.
The human aquarium. Yeah.
Or if you like to think of it more as an orchestra, is we're tuning up the orchestra pit of the 12-string guitar, each organ being a string, the yin and yang being each organ has an innie and an outie. A yin in, such as the heart in and the small intestine out. Yang organs are out or hollow. So the things that flow out of you have to have room to go out, to leave room for good stuff to come in. So the amp coil is kind of like a car wash on the inside.
That's interesting.
It opens up the negative tunes, and wherever you're out of tune, it flushes it out. But then it pours back in what's so in tune. By ratio, your whole instrument tunes up.
That's interesting about the yin and yang of the organs. I remember you touching on that in your speech. And oddly enough, after all these years, I've never heard it framed that way. Is that from Chinese medicine?
Yeah,
or is it
traditional Chinese medicine?
That's
and
so
even
funny.
preceding that was Ayurvedic medicine,
right?
Which said that if you have an organ that's sick, that might be just decompensating because its pair was actually really so sick it was silent. Mm-hmm. So should we keep treating the symptom when we miss its pair? That's the real trouble. So the amp coil is built on paired organs in all stages. So we keep giving you both wings of your plane to fly straight. Instead of just treating in medicine often one organ at a time, in allopathic medicine, you have the cardiologist. But he doesn't necessarily work so closely with the gastroenterologist, even though those are both fire signs.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So our philosophy
Trippy.
is ancient wisdom with modern technology.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That fits my philosophy of healing too. I always go to nature. Everything.
Exactly.
I have a bunch of devices. I have amp coil. I have I don't know. I could probably put a down payment on a cheap house with the amount of equipment I have in my apartment.
Yeah.
Maybe I should. But they're all based on nature. There's a molecular hydrogen machine. Hydrogen is in the atmosphere. There's all sorts of grounding technology, et cetera, And so that makes perfect sense to me. Sometimes I think we have to mimic nature, amplify
totally
principles and powers of nature in order to...
we put all of those exact in here. So we do have the hydrogen in the primer.
Oh,
and
really?
the oxygen.
Oh, cool.
And the zinc to hold your plug. And then the spiral of Fibonacci. And then the ability for the minerals to ground you on the 61 piano keys. And then we put in there the Fibonacci, the chakra colors and the grounding to set the tone before the choir sings. There's the pitch pipe at first called our primer, and it sets you up for perfection. Then now you can start playing different songs on that violin of yours. The songs are played through the coil, and the coil is vibrating your own body as if your body is the speaker cabinet. So the woofer, this bass speaker is on your belly you can sit on it. You can put it on your feet and you're vibrating the music, which is the perfect pitch right into your organ system. So they go, oh, I'm flat or I'm sharp. Oh, when I hear this, like in training to the beat, the music of the songs in the amp coil entrains your organs to go right. I recognize that. That's my liver sound. And the liver starts training and entraining to the music.
And it's literally done at the same frequencies which almost every love song is done in. So it's your body's literally lulled into a state of just bliss.
On that note, you guys, this is the first time I've ever tried to incorporate something that's physically here and visual into an audio podcast. So those of you that are just listening, you might want to go to the YouTube version of this and check it out if you want to know what we're doing. But I couldn't resist because I have my amp coil here. It comes in this amazing road case, so I take it everywhere.
It's sturdy.
I can't stand traveling without it. But of course, I brought it up here because as we're going to talk about, I'm going to go visit my mom, who I haven't seen in a long time. She lives in Northern California and has had Lyme forever. And so I've been really excited to learn this technology over the last year. And I think I'm finally ready to kind of go and train her. So I have it with me for travel and then also to go help her. But I want to just do a little run through of what it is, since we are on video, on the YouTube video, and then the people watching on social. So,
well, first, it does no harm. So you can be not afraid to do it on your mother or your anybody, except if they have implantable, programmable, computerized chips in them for some insulin pump or
a pacemaker
hearing pump
or something.
We want to be careful that we don't demagnetize a credit card too heavily. Well, we don't want to demagnetize your pump if you have one in your body somehow.
Right.
Okay. But other than that, there's no side effects and no contraindications, because we're playing the symphony of which you're already made.
Right.
So we're not doing something foreign to you.
Right.
We're taking your foreign out of you and putting what's more natural back to you. And then we do that through a speaker system and an amplifier. It's as simple as that.
Okay. So those of you watching on YouTube, what I'm holding in my hand would be what we would consider the speaker. This is the magnetic coil, right?
Mm-hmm. It's called a transducer. Because you're not actually hearing it out loud, so we don't say it's a speaker.
Right.
It's actually a transducer.
And this looks to me very, in weight and shape, very similar to what would be on the back of a subwoofer. Like we have a guitar amplifier, a tube amplifier behind us.
Yeah. And woofers and bass usually goes down to the hearing level of 30 hertz. But the brain works at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So this is an actual bass and a sub-bass. And that's why it's a miraculous engineering marvel, is to even get down below that bass in no distortion. This has zero noise, zero distortion, way down to the brain speed of 5 hertz for learning, for mitochondria, for crosstalk on the brain, for sleep, relaxation, and brain entrainment. So this isn't just a musical tool for the body. It's for the mind and the spirit.
Well, you know, that's what I use it for a lot, actually. I've done some cleansing and things like that. I don't have, as far as I know, we're going to talk about some of my labs, though, because I have some bugs that I just found out about, but I don't have any autoimmune issues or anything that I'm aware of. So I mostly use it for meditation, and my friends come over, and my house has become this healing center. And if somebody's having anxiety or depression or just, you know, cognitive issues, emotional issues, going through a tough time, a death, a breakup, something like that, I'll run the AMP Coil programs that are the nourishing ones.
Sure.
And it's a matter of like, I can count down from 30 seconds and they're going to be out cold, just in bliss zone.
Yeah.
It's so fun. Cause I had my friend come over recently, and he is going through a breakup. And he's just a nervous wreck, you know, and just can't get over it, as sometimes happens. And he doesn't know about biohacking, alternative health, herbalism. He's just a regular dude who works for a phone company. And I said, man, if you're having a hard time, you're welcome to come over. I have a bunch of devices. Probably take me too long to explain, but just please trust me. I'm not going to hurt you. And he said, I trust you. Do whatever. So he comes over. I hook him up to the AMP Coil and about 5 other things at once that are all safe and compatible. Give him an herbal elixir, and he just goes out for about 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And then he comes out and he's like, oh, man, mate, he's British. Mate, I'm so sorry. I fell asleep. I said, I knew that was going to happen. I want you to rest and nourish. And
he just completely reset his nervous system.
Yeah. Exactly. And now he texts me all the time. He's like, can I come over for another one of those healing sessions? And he doesn't even care what it is. Yeah. He just knows it works.
Totally.
Okay, so let's back up to the so I can, you know, stop torturing the audio listeners on a visual here. So we've got the magnet, and I've heard someone call this a modified Tesla coil.
It's based on Tesla's technology that he decided or learned how to transduce electricity into magnetism. So in the Tesla theory of transduction, we turned our electrical signals of music into magnetic waves. So that's what we call this a transducer coil, which was based out of the Tesla tradition. It's not an engineering model of a Tesla generator.
Okay.
Because there's no moving magnet and running an engine or a motor or a rotor on it.
Right.
So it's not technically a Tesla generator, but it is a transducer, as Tesla was able to harness, and Faraday to show how to harness electricity into magnetism.
Thank you for explaining that, because I've been trying to explain this thing to people for a year, and I'm like, I get the basics of it, but then they'll ask me, what do you mean, Tesla invented it? I'm like, no, it's the you know,
so
I don't have the exact
think about
answer.
it more like this, that it's the pump that makes the ocean move back and forth, that mixes the water and the salt and the coral reef of minerals. This is the pumping action, and it's called alternating current, which Tesla discovered instead of direct current, that alternating current, on, off. That's a sine wave in music. On, off. So we built this with sine wave musical frequencies so that it would be exactly like the analog orchestra of a live cello. not a digital signal necessarily of a square wave that's supposed to represent a sine wave.
Right.
And therefore, when we're using an analog speaker and taking our digital music and coming out an analog speaker and turning the analog speaker into magnetic fountain, now you're getting a wave around you like you're in the middle of the surround sound.
Wow.
So about 40 centimeters wide or a foot or a couple feet around you, you've now created the George Jetson bubble around you, upon which your field can now, in that bubble, have different spotlights of different colors shine into it and change the fountain to red, orange, yellow, green, light blue, dark blue, magenta, the different colors of zinc, tin, copper, manganese. Like all these different minerals make different sounds in your body.
As you're going up, this is one I think a lot of people are going to have to watch on video. I wish we had a PowerPoint kind of too.
Oh, don't worry. I don't mean to.
No. It's good. So what I'm hearing there, because it's all in alignment with nature and these rhythms and these tones that exist in space and
they're
on
natural
the planet,
tones in sine wave.
But what I heard was going up the scale, right, and then also the colors of the chakra system going up.
And the colors are bent light with different frequencies of minerals in them. So when you look at red, which is, certain colors of zinc, and orange for tin, and yellow for sulfur, and green for magnesium in the heart that runs all your dopamine in your guts. And light blue is copper. So for the thyroid, well, the amazing thing about the musical thing is that the copper, which is 440 hertz, and blue allows the blue thyroid hormone to sit in the blue keyhole because they weigh the same amount, 440. So the 440 hormone fits in the 440 keyhole. But in the male,
so crazy.
And in the male hormone, say testosterone, it's 128 hertz. It fits in the red socket, which is 128, which is middle C, 128. So middle C is the same frequency as testosterone, is the same frequency as minerals and zinc that make testosterone. So the nature has sorted itself naturally into wavelengths of a molecular weight.
And who associated those minerals with those colors? Is that someone's work that we can cite, or where does that?
Well, I think that if you go back to the Knights of the Round Table and the Rosicrucians and the spiritual chanters and the monks, they all knew that certain crystals would be put on people's body parts of different frequencies and heal them with crystal therapies in ancient times.
Crazy. I just did a show on crystals because I'm pretty woo-woo and open-minded, but crystals are the one thing I've always been
the molecular weight
not so down with. But I just did a great interview and I'm pretty on board now, I would say. I'm 90% there.
Well, just think that if you look at a rainbow, you can tell the difference between a red and a blue and a green part of the rainbow, right?
Sure.
So what's the difference there? The rainbow is just light coming through a water prism. Our bodies are water prisms.
Okay.
And when light comes into us, we refract into different wavelengths that actually match different color thresholds of different minerals. Different organs have different minerals that run them differently.
Right.
So zinc really runs the prostate. So the prostate loves zinc to make sperm and eggs in the ovaries. Whereas the spleen really needs to clean the body with tin, which heats up the tin, heats up the body and burns off infections. So there's a lot of orange color in the spleen chakra. And the liver is full of sulfur and selenium, which are yellow in color. So the chakra of yellow tones center around the middle of the body, where the liver is just jam-packed with sulfur.
That's crazy.
So your body, and then when you come to the heart's full of magnesium, so it vibrates green and 432 pitch, and the colors of even all the way up to cobalt blue for pituitary, manganese for the crown. You cannot get mentally well then if you don't have those minerals to hold the hormones in their sockets. So a person without minerals cannot have their keyholes met with the proper hormones to hang in there. So as soon as you use music to put the do, re, mi, fa, so back in, which is zinc, tin, copper, magnesium, copper, if you put in all those notes, those organs should work.
So our philosophy is music is medicine.
Well, I want to jump back to the device
Yeah.
And thank you for that. My head is spinning now. I could go off in a million. Well, no, in a beautiful way.
We didn't all learn this in school.
I could go off in a million different directions, but I'm like, no, Luke, bring it back.
It's all mathematics.
I want to wrap. That's why my head spins in a positive sense. But I want to bring it back because I want to really get people that are watching an understanding of what this is. Because again, it's hard for me to explain. So we know that we have this magnetic field that's delivering the frequencies, and then you guys can see there's just a simple
frequencies means just tones.
Tones,
a note,
okay.
Like a score of music.
Right.
And various different frequencies or tones of different pitches go by.
Right.
So this is the score generator, the sequencer that sequences the score to the orchestra called your body.
The tablet, we're looking at, those of you listening, we're looking at a tablet that has, probably thousands of different...
There's thousands of tones in there, but they're arranged into about 100 prefab songs. So you don't have to worry about working it all out, figuring it all out, what sequence, how much, and when. That's been up to me for 40 years of science in Geneva with all kinds of intellectual property between she and I talking for hours and hours for 3 years about getting this sequence of the score correct.
Right.
They literally, when we first started this a few years back, we had this whiteboard that was like the size of a wall. And you walk in, and there's literally quantum physics
that look like Goodwill Hunting.
Yeah, you literally look like a scene from
life.
that. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm watching these two women, and they're going back and forth like this, like they completely understood it. The rest of us are going, okay, is that Chinese?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not, the way I kind of think of it is I think of this as an iPod with different albums that have different songs.
It's Android, but not Apple, so it's not
right.
iPod.
That's
just
okay.
A music player,
yes,
right? Or you
so.
could say like your record collection or something.
Your wave player.
Right.
Yeah.
And then this is sending via a speaker cable those frequencies into an amplifier, which is a very, how many watts is that amp?
250, supercapacitors, smart boards, really efficient.
Is the
other competitors are using boards that are 600 watts because they're 600 volts because they're so inefficient. We've had international engineers crawl all over this with amazing precision technology.
I love
and we got it so efficient that we got down to 250 voltage. So that doesn't take so much power out of your house.
Oh,
other people are using as much as an oven's power coming out of there.
Oh, interesting. So you got more power but less voltage.
Yeah, because we've got super efficiencies at every turn.
Less is more.
In the amplifier...
but 250 watts, 250 volt toroidal is still pretty...
I'm a former bass player, and I think some of the heads that I would use to power my cabinets were about this heavy. This thing is a beast.
Yeah.
Is it... It's solid state, though. There's no tubes in there, right?
There's no tubes, but there are, in order to heat sink it and ground it, we put some aluminum plates and other things in there to ground it. So there's a few things that allow the components to be packed into tight spaces without interfering with each other.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I've got my music player, or that's playing different tones, frequencies, vibrations, etc. It's going into the amp, and then the amp's delivering them through this magnetic coil. Right. That's the way it works.
Mm-hmm. And that's your surround sound speaker where you're sitting in the middle of the surround sound.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool because I love being able to show people that and, people can go observe this.
While you've got the tablet, one of the key things that really no other technology has is the ability to analyze what's going on just through a simple voice print, which is our way of using biofeedback.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that because that one's really interesting for people too. Because when I run it on people, it's very difficult. What happens, you guys, is you say just random vowel sounds. You run through the alphabet, and it this device. The tablet records your voice, and then it spits back some data of the organs or the things of highest priority for you to work on. And
Correct.
It's very difficult for people to get out of their head that that's not diagnosing you. So if you run that and it says, you have a high score in liver or whatever, or some organ or gland, everyone says, oh my God, my liver's sick, and they freak out. And I try to explain
I'm so happy they do because I want them to stare at themselves in the mirror and look at where they need some reflection. And by forcing them to have the playlist, randomly it's not. We have a playlist of all the body parts, an exact sequence of yin yang for every body part. And wherever you're wobbling in your voice print the most out of tune, we force you to play that song first. So we're making you take your weakest link out of your chain first. Now, does that mean you have a diagnosis of liver troubles? No, because you might have just eaten lunch right now, and it's that time of day for liver to be working hard, and you could be perfectly clean. But that's the liver song that came up to the top of your list of your body saying, my priority right now in this hour and in this time is liver. But what happens if every single day of the week, no matter what, it keeps coming up with liver? Don't you think you should have a look at your liver or play a liver song and try and tune up? That's the feedback. The word feedback means I get a biological measurement like my tape measure or my blood pressure, in this case, my vocal pressure. And I say, where am I high or low? And if the premise of the AMP coil is that no disease or condition matters, all we try to do is push you to the center, like a pitch pipe to the choir. If everybody is all in tune, the body should better integrate with itself and perform its functions.
Yeah.
So we don't claim to cure a disease, even though some diseases are dropping like flies in our system. We don't claim to cure anything. We just say that your body has capacity to clear itself if unburdened and tuned up and toned up. You have natural stem cells to go and clean up your body every night at 4 a.m., so long as you have enough zinc to run them.
I just spent a lot of money to go have stem cells taken out of my body and put back in various places. Probably could have just...
So why don't you go to the AMP coil song on stem cells called Blood Repair for white cells, red cells, and that vibrates 880 hertz into the blood and the bone marrow with tin and zinc and copper, and all of a sudden you've got the raw ingredients to make your own.
How did you guys come up with the voice... what do you call it? The
voice analysis.
Analysis. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, it's technology that's been around for a while. There isn't a lot of applications that people are familiar with in daily use. But like, for example, most lie detector tests now are done through voice analytics. So it's technology that's being widely used that way. And then it's not that much different if you've ever used voice texting on your phone. It's picking up on the algorithms of your voice. So that's something that most of us use every day, And
I would like to correct you by saying we just say a few random vowels. Actually, there's great scientific, Ayurvedic, and traditional Chinese medicine in the choices of this.
Oh, interesting.
The CIA lie detector test found out that the most close to a sine wave resonant frequency in the whole spectrum of voice prints of 20 to 20,000 hertz was the most accurate in this particular vocal range, by saying the vowels, not the consonants.
Oh,
so the consonants didn't have the sibilance and the diagnostic ability to see if the sine wave was smooth or not as easily. Because when you say the word A, it's a nice long vowel. There's a big long sine wave.
Sure.
So we use wood, fire, earth, air, and water for the A, E, I, O, and U. So now when I look at the A, I'm looking at your liver, how's that doing, and your gallbladder. E, looking at your heart and intestines. I, looking at your stomach, spleen, pancreas. O is looking at your lung and colon, and U is looking at bladder and kidney. So as a result of technology's super speed of nanotechnology speeds, I can analyze all of those in submenus, check it out, which one's the highest, lowest, ask a computer to prioritize it, and suddenly after a 30-second voice print, I already got your numbers to which string is out of tune. So I might as well ask you to play yourself first on the tune, on the out of tune, and make yourself aware of where that is, and make you maybe be aware that my liver needs more sulfur. So maybe I'll go and eat some. And maybe I didn't know I was traveling and I had a amoeba from some terrible food poisoning I caught while drinking on the beach, or having a pork tapeworm because I ate raw pork on a barbecue out somewhere. And I didn't know that I had these hidden indicators.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if you know if you know the exits in the maze, you can get out of it.
Welcome to Star Trek medicine.
Right.
I mean, literally, there's an element of that. And our newest technology, which is smaller, lighter, it's called the Trekker, kind of a play on words with...
I was wondering where that came from.
To trek around the world and to go into Star Trek mode. And
that one's like
hyperspace.
about half the size of this.
It's...
37 down to 22 pounds?
22 pounds, yeah.
The coil is also slightly stronger at 1.5 ohm instead of 1 to be more efficient at lighter work. The processing boards have all been stacked instead of spread out wide so we can get compaction.
Oh, interesting.
We got super smart boards. I mean, honestly, the technology is jumping ahead rapidly. So our company is committed in very important ways to keep on giving upgrades to the technology in the tablet so that we're keeping up with technology in the simplest form, but not... Honestly, you don't need to have a Cadillac to do the right job with bells and whistles. You need it to just be so pure on this tablet. That's all you need. So we don't adorn this with lots of other bizarre things that are not necessary. We want the most bare bones cost. And we only have very slim margins on this because we're a humanitarian company. Yeah. We feel that we needed to get it in other people's hands. So we built the best thing that our competitors are charging maybe 20 or 30,000 for. We have it on 8,000 to 10,000 range for those devices, and that's cradle to grave. You're going to have it for years, decades, and not only on one person, but your whole family and friends.
Yeah.
Tell them how many people are using our coil when we look and we see that we sold it to one person, but our back statistics office say 85 people were shared with that device.
Wow. Oh,
Because
because you see
people are sharing-
the user profiles that are created?
So we're seeing that people like you are sharing it with 85 friends.
Yeah.
Now, how's that for cost
I
efficiency?
probably have about 15 profiles in mine. And a lot of people don't make one. They just come over and use my demo one or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
You don't have to do the voice print to analyze yourself, to just use the harmonizing journey and whatever. But if you want to clean yourself and you don't know where to start, your voice print can give you a little more guidance.
I want to go back to the voice print a little bit because this is something that people are so intrigued by or confused by. And when I do it, and when I'm doing the vowels, right, I'm going, A, and I'll try to I want to beat the system and see if I can come with a really clean note, but I'm not an inherent singer.
I try the same.
So I think I wonder if Aretha Franklin, God rest her soul, could have been like, ah, and like have no fluctuations in that note and come out with like really low numbers.
It wouldn't matter because what we're looking for is the deviation from the mean of whether your voice has a sine wave. So here's Debbie Drake's voice, hello. But a tapeworm is like, hello, a different kind of sound.
Yeah.
It sounds creepy. So when you mix that together, the analysis by the computer can easily see that that's a totally different waveform than that. So it separates out the human forms from the microbiome of biological infections. They always have a different sound. Infections sound weird.
Yeah.
So when you hear them out loud on this, they do sound very weird.
And, the thing, I think you would probably be on the same page with me here, where it's like we've been around this so long now that we can talk to somebody and they haven't even done a voice analysis and we can hear in their voice that there's issues.
Yeah, the gravel pit's the telltale sign that there's two voice prints superimposed on each other.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Hello, I really like to date you.
That's the voice every night for me. That's like, go get some ice cream. It's 11 p.m. Feed us.
That's right. Well, remember, all the parasites have the exact same hormones as you, urges as you, sexual urges, food and sugar urges. And they come out to, they mostly wake up when you're going to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
So if you have insomnia and anxiety and high histamine and high allergies, you may want to consider the AMP Coil. We have a 30-day cleansing program where you can do not just a 3-minute song, like the hit single. We have the extended play albums like Dance House Mix, 30 minutes long on each organ, one at a time. Yin, yang. So now 30 steps into it, over maybe 60 days, you've cleaned every closet in the house of old junk.
Yeah.
And now you're getting back to factory reset in the tuning of your body. Now, you might think this sounds crazy, but people on the stage today were getting up and saying, I've been in bed for 10 years and I just got up in a month or two and I got my job back and I got my mind back and I got my appetite back and I got my body back.
Well,
what's happening there is nature is taking its course and getting back to zero point.
Right.
And most of us in the crazy world we live in today are getting more and more detached from nature. And now you have things like 5G coming on.
Oh, God.
And so people...
I got to do a show about that.
Yeah.
I have a show coming up on chemtrails.
Yeah.
The guy's not going to let me call it that. I have to call it geoengineering because he doesn't want to be debunked. But
of course.
The 5G thing is
so we have that in the AMP Coil. We have the dissolvings for biological warfare, chemical warfare, allergic warfare. Some of those things are basically public knowledge. So I'm taking advantage of cleaning out the body of foreign substances, whichever they may be, non-discriminating. I don't even want to blame, and I don't care where you got it, and I don't care how long you've had it. All I want is out of you. If it's a negative vibration called a discordant harmonic, then the body feels a fight or flight response, and your autonomic nervous system cannot calm down. So if you remove those discordant vibrations with perfectly tuned vibrations, the body's stress response goes down. And we know that stress kills. The hormone of stress eats your brain out and causes dementia. Stress hormone prolonged makes you forget yourself. You just cannot continue to sustain even 30 days in an ICU without dying if your cortisone runs out.
Wow.
So you have to restore the fight or flight response by turning it off. And in Lyme disease, that's hard to do because the bug is intracellular, hiding inside the cell. Yeah. So when your white blood cell cop goes along the janitorial highways of your body, it can't spot it.
Yeah. These bugs, let's call them bugs, they're intelligent. They're so intelligent that they know, and this is where it gets really difficult for almost anything to get to them, is they know that they can go and hide in the brain in the back and the thick part of the skull, and that they're safe there. At least they think they are.
Because the blood-brain barrier, which is an electrical barrier, keeps the water bag of your body separate from the fat of your brain.
Oh, it's an electrical barrier?
It's an electrical
That's
barrier.
funny. When people talk about the blood-brain barrier, I always think there's like just these really tightly squeezed veins they can't get through the skull or something.
So that's why Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi forces can lower the bombardment of that barrier and make it difficult for your body to distinguish the two polarities of the fat and the water compartments.
Whoa.
So when we use AMP Coil, because it is penetrating magnetically through bone, then it can get inside the skull to the spirochetes of Lyme disease and vibrate them to nullification and or dissolution or dissolving, we call it, without now you having a autoimmune reaction against the die-off because they're already nullified in situ. They're already stuck in the brain, but you can't get rid of it until they dissolve. So by dissolving them, the white blood cells of the brain, the glial cells, can eat it up. All the debris is not inflammatory anymore because it's just water. You blew the bug apart, so the bug doesn't have its immune reaction. It's now the rubble of amino acids, proteins, water. So the white blood cells come along and go, well, that's just a bit of rubble. I'll just eat that up and get stronger. It's just food to me now. It doesn't send the bomb of, chemical warfare and antibodies against the brain anymore. So now we stop attacking the self. So by taking these and before other devices couldn't get inside the cell, they went around the cell with electrical ripe devices, but they couldn't get through the cell. Now, wouldn't you rather have the SWAT team have the moat go down over the drawbridge over the moat, and then the gas castle gates open, and the SWAT team goes in and pulls the thief right out of the castle? They draw the bridge up. Now your cell's not fighting internally.
And and going into a little backstory, Aaron, for those people that maybe haven't heard the episode we did where we went way into your story, is what Deborah just said why you couldn't heal your Lyme before? I mean, because you were doing the IV ozone and doing all kinds of stuff, right?
Literally traveled the world, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, and everywhere I went was another piece, a piece of the puzzle. But I realized there was nobody out there that was putting all the pieces of the puzzle together in one place, and there's the issue.
Yeah.
So would you get some symptom relief if you went and did Rife or ozone or some of the other technologies?
But at the same time, a lot of times I was shooting in the dark, so it was like I get sicker.
And how long
did you... And the Rife generators are frequency specific and very long periods of time on one frequency. Right. We found that the bugs actually, when you oscillate like music, the root and the fifth and the root and the fifth, they go to sleep and go into a null state. Am I on? Am I off? Am I sleeping? Am I off? And so the bugs don't know whether they're, so you don't necessarily have to kill them to neutralize them. They just go off. And now, would they grow back if the living conditions of the soil wasn't so perfect for them anymore? Maybe you move the pH back from an alkaline gut to a nice acidic gut with probiotics and with good amp coiling, and you got all the poisons out of you. Well, the petri dish can't support their life anymore. Then you're a different kind of person. You got stronger immunity. You got stronger electrical field. You've got stronger minerals. You got stronger white blood cells. And you got less burden. So usually at some point the leverage flips back in your favor. The bugs are just really not the enemy. They're a biological living piece of nature that evolves naturally if given the right living conditions. So if we as people keep poisoning our bodies with alcohols and phenols and poisons and pesticides and vaccines, we're changing the bioterrain of our gut. So we're going to grow the cleanup crew called yeast.
Wow.
The yeast loves lead poisoning. So as we release the yeast with amp coil, some people get symptoms of lead poisoning coming out. They feel even worse with the Hercs reaction. So we put in proactive lead poisoning and yeast metal detox because we know that lead's going to come out when you pull the yeast out. Yeah. And that's where my experience as the programmer and the score writer is to use my 40 years as a doctor of medicine, natural medicine and allopathic emergency toxicology.
And literally
to make it clean enough that anybody could use it.
Well, and I think you remember this because I'd been sick so long and because I'd herxed so much, I knew that a lot of things that you may do out there, when you start herxing that often, you don't want to go back and use that thing again. Yeah. So
I bet.
It's aversion therapy at some point.
Yeah,
if you don't do it in the right order, and the right order means when you do the laundry machine, what do? You first wet it, then you sort of mulch it up and you soap it up. And and then you rinse the junk off. Then you do a re-rinse, sort of. So we set up the actual autopilot journeys in here, which is a symphony with a prelude. Let me get ready. A first act. Let's get nutritionally ready. Electrolytes, get me my minerals.
Build up
then
the
let
immune
me
system.
boost up my organs. Is each one of the orchestra in tune itself? Then let's clean out any of the rusty instruments or the broken strings.
Yeah.
And then let's have everybody tap to the orchestra conductor called the DNA closing. Everybody now remember, your new program is this better way, this more in tune way, the more intoned up way. You no longer, so at the very end of each of our major journeys, we will overwrite you with the repair and closing so we don't leave you gaping open. Often people do rife, open, but they don't close themselves. So they've left their electrical field open like a weeping wound and not suturing it closed.
Yeah. So this literally, when Doc and I had known each other for quite a long time, for a while, and I said, okay, there's only maybe a handful of people on the planet that can figure out how to take this issue away of using a technology like this to where you feel like you can continue to use it in a way where you want to keep going back to it. And so we even put what's known as a Hercs Help button in there. So if somebody does feel a little off, you're literally recharging the body so they can actually get on with their day and do life when their body's cleaning out. So
I mean, the Lyme aspect of this is obviously close to my heart, having someone I love dearly afflicted. And it was fascinating over the weekend, over the past 3 days at the conference, seeing people come up and give, unsolicited testimonials. When someone's being genuine, they don't have any ulterior motive. You guys aren't cutting them a check in the back room.
No.
It's just insane the vast number of people that, as you said.
And the severity. Wasn't that surprising? I'm talking as a doctor that it would take me 2, 3, 5 years to clean out a yeast client who had MS, who had metal poisoning. These guys are coming and telling us in 2, 4, 6, 10 weeks, they've got their life back from being in bed. I mean, even we are surprised at the accelerated rate. And I believe that's because the synergism of the PEMF pulsing wave as a mechanism of a magic carpet ride is now carrying the piggyback of these bioenergetic resonance frequencies or tones better and deeper to where they're supposed to go. So the piggyback ride together, plus the voice print to say, aim in that direction. That's what's accelerating. They're getting the right speed, the right time, the right organ at the right combination for each individual is different from each other. Your voice print would never be the same as mine, so your journey would probably be selected in a slightly different manner than mine. So this allows us to give customized, personalized health, not cookie-cutter medicine again. Where everybody's got cholesterol, but nobody thinks, well, what, would you put everybody in the world on a pill for cholesterol instead of looking at cholesterol as a cleaning agent? What are they trying to clean?
We'll be right back at you after this brief but important announcement. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Thrive Market. You can go to thrivemarket.com/Luke and save literally, this is not marketing numbers, these are real numbers, 25 to 50% off traditional retail prices on food that's organic, paleo, gluten-free, raw, vegan, food for your kids, non-GMO stuff, fair trade, certified, BPA-free, all of the labels that you need on all of that stuff for a huge discount. This is where I shop for all of my snacks, supplements, vitamins, personal care products, eco-friendly cleaning supplies for the house, safe and non-toxic beauty products, kitchen staples, home goods, all that kind of stuff. If you have kids, like straight up, they have great stuff for babies and youth, and it's all organic. It all meets my standards. I mean, I go on there sometimes and I'm like, all right, sure, I'm going to see something crappy on here that I don't agree with. And I got to be honest, they're really good at vetting all of the products that they put on the site. It's really amazing stuff. If you want to see me in action, just Google Luke Story Thrive Market, and you can see my epic unboxing video where I take out every single item in the box and show you not only what I eat and what I recommend to eat for some people, but also how much I saved on each thing. It's pretty cool. But if you just want to dive right in and go shopping, go to thrivemarket.com/Luke, and you're going to save an extra 25% off your first purchase and a free 30-day trial. So that's 25% off extra, and then an additional 25 to 50 on their regular prices. So go to thrivemarket.com/Luke to check it out. And now back to the interview. That's an interesting thing about the voice analysis too is, and naturally this makes sense, that it changes all the time. That's why you don't want to keep doing a new one. Because sometimes I'll do one, I'm like, I don't know, that doesn't really resonate with me. I don't know if that sounds true. And then I do another one a day later and it's totally different. Because imagine like in a millisecond, there's literally millions of cellular variables that are in motion within your biology and your energetics, right? I mean, is that why?
Even more than that, metaphysically, the moment that you see something, the moment that you witness something in your own body, it begins to heal it instantly. So even seeing the first idea that you were low in enzymes or that you had, low antioxidants on your nutrition panel, your body already starts thinking I'm hungry for vitamin C, and it starts looking for the kiwis because it is an instantaneous process that we can't believe. Dr. Hamer in Germany showed that CAT scans lose their injury signal 24 hours later after you admit you're wounded. So when we were talking today about saying, I admit I am wounded, I admit I may have made some mistakes, I forgive myself for these wounds. Well, the AMP Coil has programmed for ascension codes, harmonious codes, love codes. So you actually are being programmed to self-love again, even whether you like it or not. It's already in there for me to force you to love yourself. But then at the same time, your self-respect and the ease of suffering and the pain goes down and the stress goes down. So you actually are more likely to be compliant with it and go back to it even more because you felt so good.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But why did you feel so good? I like to think it's because we played your worst thing first and got it out of the way. So the next time you go back, it's only the second worst thing. Then the next time, it's only the third worst thing that was in you. And if it's something changes in you and you keep getting the weakest link out first, it's more likely to accelerate you faster.
You start getting that cascading.
When you came up with the iteration of this device, Aaron, that helped you with your Lyme symptoms, at what point did you know, like, okay, I've nailed it, I'm getting better, and I'm not having the adverse reactions that you're having with the other things?
Yeah. For me, from a time standpoint, I'd say I'll call it a journey because that's what we call it when you're using the program. It was about 6 months before I felt like I'm literally out of the woods, no pun intended. And now with Doc and Geneva and the rest of our team, we've accelerated to where that's happening, I believe, in 60 to 90 days max.
Yeah. And how we were able to accomplish this is we built a section called Vitality. And we found that Lyme disease is highly associated with multiple other co-infections. So people have the symptom of Lyme, but they had Babesia or Bartonella or blastomycosis or, brucellosis. Well, these are very stubborn things that even medical labs don't even often look for because they're hard to find. You have to send your tests off. You have to grow a fungus for a month in the lab to even find it. So doctors don't even look for half of these things that are difficult to find. And yet, statistically, we know they're highly associated. So what we did was we made a journey called Vitality with clumps of things that tend to run together. Because if you take out the whole refugee camp of all the, grifters all at once, for instance, worms lay their eggs in amoebas, and amoebas hang around rickettsias, and rickettsias are masked by yeast. So if you take all of those 4 elements of those bugs out of there, you change the whole neighborhood. It's less likely that the Lyme would come back over and over and over because its eggs were incubated in a different species, but we changed the species of that. And when I say change the microbiome, there's a lot to be said about microbiology. It's highly intelligent, and there's 100 million microbes in your body. There's only trillions of your cells, but there's 10 times more bugs in your body than human cells.
Yeah.
That's kind of creepy, but it's not really because the bugs actually ferment stuff for us. Like E. coli in the gut cycles 60% of your testosterone is recycled by E. coli in your gut. It's only when you get the pathogenic enterocolic food poisoning E. coli that then you get really so sick. But there's a natural E. coli of a good guy down there. There's a good staph and strep on your skin. It's only when you cut your skin that they grow underneath the skin that they're not welcome inside your blood. So we don't want to kill things as much as shoot them all down, because then you just have die-off reaction after die-off reaction. And where would you be then? After years, we've realized if we change the bioterrain, which is how salty of a water tank is in your aquarium with minerals and how much oxygen is bubbling into the tank. If you just fix those 2 elements, almost all the bugs disappear because they don't like a salty oxygenated tank.
That's so interesting. You just brought the thought of gardening, which I've attempted a couple times. And when you have soil that's unhealthy, all these pests come.
Oh yeah,
And you have all of these weird things growing on your plants, and then
Yeah.
you have to try to, if you're organic, you try to spray some stupid garlic oil on them, and they're gone. I've tried this, but in biodynamic farming, there's so much biodiversity in that living soil that it's like it's so far beyond even organic.
I have a friend who makes soil and it actually moves.
Really?
It's got so much of all the right things in it that it's actually a formidable thing that I think we have really under-recognized.
Wow. So there's a correlation there, I guess, in the bioterrain.
And not to creep you out, remember just that the body has a mouth to an anus that's the hollow center of you. It's the outside world passing through you. It's not in you.
Right.
So when you're trying to eradicate these bugs, don't get creeped out that these bugs are primarily in your bloodstream. It's the exit yang tubes that are the exit of these things. So we want to promote the exit and flushing of the body with AMP Coil so that even before you go into a detox, we suggest you do a month of organ drip and cleaning and nutrition. And even before you would go into heavy duty biological terrain, we really build you up with probiotics and all the things that maintain you so that you have good soil, so that when you plant the new soil ideas of the good bugs, they have the right milieu to live in, just like breast milk has different sugars to help nothing on humans, but to help the biological biome grow of the bugs that help support hormones and vitamin B12 that keep your blood. So there's bugs in us that do stuff that we can't.
There's another piece to this that I think is worth mentioning, and that's the full moon cycle. So we've purposely put programs in here to kind of neutralize these bugs before they even hatch, so to speak.
So they do tend to when bugs do hatch, they use a lot of zinc out of the body, which is responsible for psychiatric disorders, skin disorders like eczema, asthma, low adrenals. And so when we see these children going autistically wild or ADHD kids freaking out just before the full moon, we've noticed tremendous improvements in their behavior since we've been using proactive deworming or full moon.
Just to give you an example, and this is kind of a little known fact, if you look at psychiatric hospitals, they literally put their patients on lockdown right before the full moon because they know what's going to happen to them.
I'd like to think the same in jails.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because all the bugs are going crazy and they affect your neurotransmitters and your hormones.
Oh, yeah. The magnetic field gets so strong from the moon.
And the yeast eats serotonin, so you're depressed and bloated. The worms eat dopamine, so you're angry and aggressive and sexually predator. And those kinds of behaviors are dramatically improved by our clients telling us, I used to be an addict and I stopped the addiction behavior when you fixed my dopamine levels. How'd you do that? Well, we took away your dopamine thief called pinworm, and now you got normal dopamine. So you're not, addiction is, I'm low in dopamine, so I'm going to go get marijuana or cocaine or a dopamine stimulant or
social media
or alcohol. All of those are dopamine stimulants. Gambling.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with many of those dopamine stimulants.
Right, but if you realize that you were low in the dopamine because you had a hidden parasite, then you were now feeling guilty that you had to bring your dopamine up manually.
Yeah.
And now we have a whole culture saying pot is normal because nobody's deworming anybody. The ingredient in pot, which is dopamine and GABA, calms worms.
Whoa.
That's pretty wild, isn't it?
Yeah, so especially here in Tahoe, there's a lot of marijuana. In fact, the home we're in is owned by my friend Brian, who has a cannabis company. He's doing quite well, maybe for that reason.
Yeah.
Well, because everybody's low in dopamine, they need that to come to neutral. It's not that everybody's getting high. They're actually low and coming to neutral, and they feel more creative, more constructive. They're getting more work done. Why? Well, ADHD is low dopamine. So the ADHD kids are self-medicating with marijuana as a normal medical device. I mean, a normal medical prescription is for ADHD because it brings their low dopamine to just a neutral that the kids can concentrate in school. So we built this into the AMP Coil so you don't need drugs necessarily. Let's pull the worms down, put your dopamine back up, and the kids are going into school with a synchronized brain on the downbeat. And suddenly we're getting incredible results of kids who couldn't speak or talk or read or learn, getting their hearing back, getting their behavior back. I mean, the parents are crying to us saying, thanks for giving us back your kid.
Wow.
That's so rewarding for me. That's the best part of this
and me
whole
as
thing.
a parent, they were just talking about bugs. It's like, okay, you can mess with me, but don't mess with my kid. It's like, okay, we're going to play a different game here.
Didn't one of your daughters have Lyme?
Oh,
Extremely
bad case. Literally body going into convulsions, seizures, eyes rolling in the back of her head, turning gray.
That's terrifying.
This went on for a long time.
And the helplessness of parents who've tried all their life savings as they have to find treatments that don't work. And now we've designed this that does work. We need people to understand we've made it as safe as possible, as pristine, as regulated as we could get. We put every component in there that's already as safe as it can be, so there's no worry. Because you got enough worries if you're wondering about new technology. And I can assure you, as a perfectionistic doctor who's done 42 bench tests on this puppy with the top research scientists at the Canadian College of Humanitarian Medicine, I'm the director of the Department of Bioenergetics. I have my PhD students crawling all over this, tweaking it like they have got it in their like geek town, right? And we have got this thing so slick, I can't believe it myself.
Do you guys foresee any sort of empirical studies where we can take a petri dish of a bunch of
great idea
bacteria, fungus?
We were just having this conversation with a microbiologist today.
Running the coil, in certain programs and watching them become inert.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, that would be so fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I love...
And live cell microscopy is a great way to show that as well.
You know, one of the women, she actually sent me her book. It's, I don't remember the name. I haven't read it yet, admittedly.
Lyme Madness?
Yeah, Lyme Madness.
Lori Dennis.
Yeah, Lori Dennis. She was there, and she sent me to her website and showed me her son's live blood analysis before and after. It was staggering.
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen blood that dirty.
Yeah.
And I've had mine done before and after using magnets and different things like that, hyperbaric oxygen, just different things I've tried because I like seeing what the blood does. And it'll clean it up and it'll get round. But whatever was in that kid's blood prior to using the amp coil was super like satanic looking. I don't know how else to say it.
It's true.
I mean, it's like they don't even look like blood cells.
Yeah, your body is invaded.
It was a disaster. And then the after picture is just like beautifully formed, no invaders in there, just these round.
Imagine the oxygen in that blood now where nothing's all clumped together and stuck together, right? So microcirculation is our main claim. We claim and we can prove through microbiology and live cell microscopy that amp coil improves microcirculation, and PEMF is known to improve nerve regeneration, bone regeneration, muscle regeneration, brain synchronicity, hormones like human growth hormone and cortisol balancing, and especially helpful in synchronizing left and right brain for language development, memory, focus, and concentration. And these things have been really greatly studied by not just ourselves, who are a small company who don't have a $5 billion research budget. They've been studied by $500 billion from NASA and all of the 10,000 other papers that are at the National Institute of Health. So what we tried to do is not reinvent every wheel, but take 5 of the best wheels in the whole world and put them in one place so that they were already pre-proven technologies. The lie detector test for voice analysis, the biofeedback concept of using pre-programmed biofeedback tunes to entrain the body, the humanizer, which equalizes it to the conformation of human brain, heavy on the base in the brain, medium on the body's sympathetic and heart, and lightweight on the vagus nerve. That's how the body's actually wired in cardiological ways. So we toned the whole amp coil to conform to humanized equalization. So now it's got the power to penetrate you, the harmony and the conformation to not shock you. And then when we amplify it 10 times on the purest, no noisy thing and put a fountain around you, then you can absorb it at every level of all your acupuncture magnetic meridians at the same time. All your blood at the same time, all your lymph at the same time, all your guts at the same time. So where is the culprit to run to? It's sterilized the whole field, if you will.
With the Lyme, which I do, we already did an episode on that, so I'm not going to cover. But
if you just substitute any disorder or any condition, the same conditions apply.
Well, what I want to ask you too about Lyme, because there's a lot of different theories about where it came from, and some of them are really far out, which totally makes sense to me in terms of biological warfare and things like that we don't have time to get into. But I recently read a book by the medical medium, Anthony something. Fascinating book.
Yep.
And in there, he spends a lot of time talking about these mysterious illnesses, all the autoimmune stuff, the autism, Lyme, MS, Parkinson's, all these things where the medical industry is kind of like, let's call it this, named after the doctor that found the person that had the worst case of it or whatever. But his theory is, and he gets his theories from entities or God or something that are channeled to him, which might sound crazy to some people, but when you hear him explain it and his track record in helping people and diagnosing mysterious things within them and what is actually at the root cause, he indicates that Lyme disease is not caused by tick bites, first off, and that it is in fact at its root a virus related to mono Epstein-Barr herpes. I'm kind of paraphrasing his theory, and that as a result of that virus lying dormant for a long period of time, then resurfacing, perhaps as a result of some other external thing like a bite, then you get all of these co-infections. Some of those I can't name that you describe, Bartonella and all this stuff. And so everyone thinks that the Lyme is these bacteria and the spirochetes, but his theory is that at the root of it is viral. Do you think that there's any validity to that, or does that ring true to you in any way?
I think that there's something important that people don't understand about microbiology. They think it's all rigid categories, that there's a bacteria, there's a virus, and there's a fungus. But in fact, life cycles like yeast go through pylomorphic phases where a yeast becomes a mold, becomes a bacteria, becomes a virus, and they can alternate and change species based on DNA modulation of what environment they live in. For instance, yeast buds up when there's lots of food around. It goes into its budding stage. Progesterone around, sugar, B vitamins and beer, pizza, let's bud up. But if there's no food for that organism, it transmutes into a different state. The yeast shrivels down into hyphae, like those little eyes on the potato bud looking for food. They puncture through your bladder and walls and they'll go searching for food. They can't find it. They change into a different morphological state. So when you ask me, is Lyme disease the autoimmune be-all and the end-all? No, because there's Lyme disease, rickettsia from Q fever and spider bites. There's Corynebacteria from bird flu. There's rickettsia chlamydia from sexually transmitted diseases. There's cicotosis and parasites from parrots. How many different species of rickettsia are there? Well, the one that's coming out of chemtrails right now is Yersinia pestis, the plague. That's an identical, similar cousin to Lyme disease. So maybe people think they have Lyme, but they're really having a chlamydia or Yersinia. And so the collective of that whole genre is what we've tried to address in the AMP Coil by not saying, I'm just shooting for the one bug.
Right.
I'm changing the family dynamics of the colony and the neighborhood and the gang they hang out with because I'm bulldozing that old ghetto and I'm changing it into a beautiful condo for the new moss to live, not the old crabgrass.
That's a great answer. Yeah, that's a great answer. That makes perfect sense, actually. So it's not, in a sense, so these microorganisms are not linear. It's not just not. Like A plus B equals C.
And here's how I'll prove it to you. It sounds kind of morbid, but watch this. If I died today, my pH of my body would no longer have oxygen at 7.4 pH. My blood would get more and more acidic. My pH of the corpse would go down 6, 5, 4. When I got down to a pH of 4, what grows at pH 4 is maggots. So the maggots would spontaneously erupt out of my body and take me back to dust. You don't see a brigade of maggots walking along the highway and invading the body that dies, do you?
Yeah, where did they come from?
They erupt from within based on the pH of within.
Oh my God.
And that means that all of us have the DNA of every organism in the wilderness, an elephant, a cow, a bug, a worm, and they only express when the DNA is at the right living conditions of that organism. So if my DNA is at 7.4, I get a human, but if my DNA unwinds to 7.5, I get a yeast. So if I just use the AMP Coil to change the pH of my body, I change the organism's petri dish.
Wow.
Well, and then
follow? And so it's better to work on the soil than chase the bugs. Right?
And then, of course, really stressed out people are perfect hosts.
Yeah. They're already low in energy, so they have be easier to invade the weak one.
Right. That's the sad thing about it is when people are so afflicted with these quote unquote mystery diseases, it's like those are the last people that should be getting sick because they have the least amount of energy and wherewithal to find solutions.
Yeah.
Totally. You know, that's what's just so sad about being close to people that have these sort of illnesses. It's just like, oh God, I feel pretty good most of the time, and it's a full-time job just fine-tuning my already almost perfect health.
It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How many people have hours
like-
and hours of days and weeks and money for supplements and doctor's visits and time spent from family? The amp coil allows you to find your fine-tuning at home without all that wasted energy and money, for one thing. That's a big missing point here.
I just spent so much money on a cleanse, you guys.
Yeah.
I want to do something here, if you allow me. It's a little bit of a spontaneous thing, but last year I got the amp coil and I did some cleansing and stuff, but I didn't really have anything specifically wrong. So I moved more into the metaphysical elements of it, and for meditation and nervous system and waking up my brain when I need to do a podcast, and I kind of use it more for that. And as I've told you guys with my friends. But then I got all of these, I got my labs done. I had all these parasites and bugs and all kinds of crazy dysbiosis in my gut. And I didn't really know at the time how to use the amp coil for that. And I just didn't have time to deal with it. So a friend of mine who's a functional medicine doctor prescribed me all of these herbs. I got the best herbs, the wormwood, the garlic oil, that. He just said, we're just going to nuke everything. And I took everything religiously, the mimosa, all of the herbs that are known to kill, all that stuff. And I'm very good at compliance. I've been a health nut vitamin junkie for 25 years. I mean, I'm not the guy who won't follow the protocol. I followed the protocol, exactly everything. And I felt better, and then I went and got tested again because I want to see negative on all those labs. I get my new labs and there's some of the stuff's gone, but there's new stuff that wasn't there before. And
because you have to creep back from the fungus, back to the worms, back to the molds, then back to the acidophilus. So by your refugee transit, you have to go back through the bugs that grow at different pHs as you're coming back to normal. So you have to come back to different base camps coming down the mountain.
So can I show you my recent labs here on
I already know what you're going to say.
I'm just curious.
I'm looking forward to saying to you that it doesn't matter. It only matters that you're going to come back to neutral.
All right.
Yeah, and literally, I mean,
because you know what? I'm a doctor who knows that there's every single bug in the world. So if you want to fix them all, there's a section in the computer for fix all.
Okay.
We have one at a time if you want. We always like to give you options on this amp coil.
Yeah.
We give you the option to go at your own speed, at your own depth, at your own power, and at your own intensity, right?
What? Yes. And
now, the moment that I give you an opinion about a laboratory test, I move out of the realm of amp coil's musical realm into the FDA-approved consultation for diagnostic approval of a specific exact bug. And when you do that, that is where amp coil draws the line, just so you know. I'm just trying to say that you're asking me to make a different type of a decision about you than one that's just on your stress indicators.
Got it.
Now you're asking me to go on a biopsy-proven something. So in the amp coil, we have a provision for this.
Yeah.
It's called the A to Z pre-existing conditions.
Right.
So if you want to have your voice print tell you what you might be hiding, that's one thing. But if you already know what you're hiding, then you can go to our A to Z cleansing list and look up the names of those particular bugs you have and just put those on your dial and do those exactly for yourself.
Right.
So,
and you can expect that the next day they might change a bit and change a bit, and then eventually they stop because they hit the jackpot of hell of normalness.
So Luke, just to give you a prime example of this, we'll use our own daughter who actually is on the autistic spectrum, and she
is this the same daughter that had the Lyme?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So she, we convinced her to basically do a 2-minute share on YouTube of her experience with the amp coil, and this is a child that normally would not even put herself in front of a camera at all, but she said, because it's helped me and because I don't want other kids to suffer, I will share my story.
How beautiful.
And the big thing that she shared was what happened with her gut and how she was one of those kids, and she talks about it actually, that couldn't eat anything. Got to the point where it was like 90% of the things that are in our diet, she couldn't eat. Her stomach would start burning. That's how toxic it was. And she shares on there that she's so happy because she can eat anything now.
It's amazing.
That is
and
amazing.
And just maybe, before I didn't mean to cut you up on looking at but I got to tell you that it doesn't really matter which bug you have now that we understand that the bugs are there only because there's a condition that led them to be there. So by looking at the root cause, rather than just antibioticing them out, which causes a superbug and antibiotic resistance and doesn't clean up the terrain that made them grow. That's where medicine's spending too much money on the wrong avenue. But by you actually saying, I realize I've got a parasite, that's biofeedback even to you. That page is showing you a new piece of consciousness.
Well, here's the thing with me is I lead such a healthy lifestyle that I think I should feel amazing all the time. And then when I look at this, I go, oh.
Yeah, but the bugs that you have come from dirty lettuce at a buffet. So you're going to stop going to buffets for the rest of your life?
Right.
The other bug you have is from walking barefoot on the beach. The third bug you have there is from having dogs.
Okay.
So are you going to stop walking on the beach and
I'm
having
not going to stop doing any of those.
Right. So why not assume that life's going to be dirty sometimes and wash yourself once in a while?
It's funny because I'm huge on barefoot activities, and people often say like, oh, that's gross, you're going to get germs. And I was like, screw that, man. The germs will make me stronger, but in some cases, maybe not. I am actually picking up bacteria and things like that.
Well, the fact that I was in South Africa, and I was walking as a Canadian around the pool in Johannesburg, and some guy saw me walking barefoot without my flip-flops. He says, are you crazy? I mean, we have mycoplasma leprosy here, mycobacterial leprosy all through our country. It's all around the pools. Put your flip-flops on. I'm in Mexico once, and he's laughing at us Canadians who didn't put oil and vinegar on our salad. I said, why are you laughing? Because you'll be home with amoeba tonight. It lives on the lettuce. That's why we suffocate the amoebas with the oil, and we put the vinegar on to change the bioterrain of the lettuce.
No way.
I was like, wow. I'm like, okay, I just get it now.
That's crazy.
So I've been walking on my oil and vinegar everywhere I go on my salad bars, right?
That's so interesting.
Realizing that we can pick up stuff anywhere.
Right.
So the amp coil allows you to still go to the beach and come home and then maybe tune up when you come home. Why have your kids with autism have total wild dopamine and fits of behavior and constipation and tight neck muscles and mutism when you could actually deworm them when they came home from the beach and you prevented it? Like Germany just last week said, we're going to deworm every kid who comes into school. After they did it in Barbados and saw their literacy rate go to 98% from deworming every kindergarten kid coming into school because they live on the beach.
Well, that's fun. I think that's what I was getting at when I wanted to show you a couple of these things. Like I have this worm, this Trichuris
whipworm.
Yeah, that. So what could be the potential side effects if I left these funky bacteria and these worms and these parasites alone? I'm just like, I don't care. So
worms cause histamine, and so you'd be histaminic all the time.
I always have a runny nose.
I'm going to have wheezy chest.
I always have a runny nose.
Yeah, that's histamine all the time. And if you have enough histamine, which is made of GABA in the brain, and you run out of histamine, guess what? Marijuana is full of GABA, so the antihistamine is
I used
marijuana.
To love me some marijuana.
So whoever loves marijuana is using it as an antihistamine.
What?
That's what it's for.
Oh my God.
That's what it's invented for by God. And by the way, isn't it interesting that plants of a specific frequency tend to heal the disease of the exact opposite? So milk 793 for the liver and milk thistle minus 793, or
what?
Different herbs are the exact frequency. Some herbs push stuff into you with a positive, so they help deficiency diseases. You put the herbs that build you up and that build you to neutral. Some diseases, some herbs are drainage herbs and they pull things out of you with a negative charge. So if you have a high inflammation, the draining herbs are negative of the same frequency and drop it out.
God, nature is so fascinating.
Yeah. The most fascinating thing that's got me the most amazed is the Star of David shape of a chamber of light. That's dopamine, adrenaline, melatonin, prolactin for orgasm. All the light-carrying hormones are the exact same frequency as measles vaccine and worms. So a person who has a perfect dopamine level, they get a measles vaccine, it drops their 787 hertz for a few days, and then they're back to normal. But a guy who's already got worms and no dopamine to start with, at minus 787 he already is, and you put a vaccine in there that's double minus 787, that kid goes no light, no dopamine. He goes mute. No dopamine, no thyroxine. He gets hypostunted growth. No dopamine. He can't focus his eyes on you. He's got he's agitated in the brain. The diagnosis of this is called autism.
Whoa.
So do you blame the vaccine or the worm or the kid who already had the poor terrain that he was vaccinated unwittingly and untested for worms before they vaccinated?
Well, this is the whole weird thing about the vaccines. I interviewed a guy named Del Bigtree, amazing guy who's people call him an anti-vaxxer, but to me, he wasn't at all. He was just a pro, let's test for their safety, which we don't do.
That's right.
Because
vaccines are given to the public health without any testing of double-blind, randomized,
and they're
placebo studies.
And they also are unable to be sued. They have immunity.
A newly formed immunity to which, when genericized drugs went out into the world, where are the drug companies going to make a profit anymore? So they went into nutraceuticals and vaccines. Since I graduated, there's 200 vaccines on the roll to come out.
Wow. Well, I think what's so interesting about that, and in the interview with him, which, by the way, listeners, you can go back to, it's something about vaccine safety with Del Bigtree. I forget the episode number.
I
probably
just
because I
him,
had vaccines. Oh, you did? No way.
At
cool.
the Toronto Health Show, and
we
we talked about vaccines missing the boat on parasites and making the vulnerability first.
Right.
And this is
that's what's always confused me about it. If quote unquote vaccines cause autism, then why is one kid that's given the same schedule doesn't get it? One does. It's just, we know that autism's going up and up and up. I mean, exponentially, just insane numbers of kids are getting it that never would have had it before. I forget the stats.
But try and understand this other stat, which is hard. And for those listeners, this is just a simple opinion of mine, but I would suggest to you that when you saw the Vaxxed movie come out and show that the CDC scientists themselves found a 2.67 rate of autism in white children and 6.7, double that in black children, they didn't want to show that the world that they might be having a worse autistic rate in black children, so they hid the evidence for some years. One of them got a guilty conscience and revealed it later. But why would black children have a higher rate of autism? Well, black children have a higher O-type blood, more dopamine, more muscle mass, more living in the southern states with more mold and more worms, and more likely to be low in dopamine to start with before they got that vaccine. So a fascinating study came where one nurse in, I think it was South Carolina, she noticed that all the kids who were cotton pickers, who had their hands in soil at the full moon and the new moon picking cotton, they had a lot of white stripes on their fingernails indicating low zinc and pinworms. So she decided to deworm the entire school. And that school went from D marks to A+, best school in the district. So how could you create a total school of ADHD and cure it in a month of deworming? That speaks volumes to me.
Oh my God, my mind's being blown.
Yeah, well, I know we've got to wrap things up, but the one thing...
Well, that's why I put so many deworming codes in here.
Yeah.
That's why
I don't want to wrap things up.
Yeah.
Whenever you guys have to call it, let me know, but I'll keep going. This is amazing.
There's one last thing that I just want to mention in this conversation is we have kids that are going to a public school. It's a charter school. It's a Waldorf. And this is in Nevada City, not far from here. And when this whole vaccine thing came up, they were going to make it it is mandatory for kids to get vaccine now. And the crazy thing is they came and interviewed at our child's school because they said that we had the highest percentage of kids in the whole state that had not been vaccinated in the whole state. And we're like, yeah, this is great. And they're showing up like this is a travesty.
Oh, man.
Like, let's educate these parents.
Mandatory education is the problem now. They're saying they're going to legislate that parents who refuse to be vaccinated now must go through a mandatory education process and not respect your religious requirements to say, I'm sovereign in my own mind that I choose to put what in my body.
Yeah.
The problem is that I believe one of the biggest difficulties that I could say is that vaccines have been found, I'm choosing my words carefully here,
okay, take it slow. I understand.
To make it a better vaccine, you want it to work harder. So nagalase, the enzyme that blocks your immune system from attaching vitamin D to your white blood cell, was found in vaccines in vaccinated children. And that nagalase enzyme should usually be found in viral illnesses or cancer victims, not in vaccine children. So that many of the doctors who found that out tried to pool their data. 10,000 cases by 10 doctors would make 100,000 cases. This is a definitive proof study. That began a series of deaths of holistic doctors in America that led to more than 80 or more, probably more now, holistic deaths in America by doctors who are researching this kind of thing and or other things along natural medicine. So I've been very careful to be certain that I do not blame something erroneously, but we have to look at the data. The data does not lie. And that's where Del Bigtree and the Vax movies are saying, let's see the data. If it's great, then you shouldn't have anything to worry about. But if that data shows that kids with worms can't handle the vitamin D blocker in the vaccine that makes them have a super reaction, and they are having many strokes from so many antigen antibody complexes after the allergy to that vaccine. And one study was a Supreme Court case in Florida. A boy died within 6 hours of a vaccine, so it was a mandatory autopsy. And it showed microembolic strokes everywhere in his whole body, but because the brainstem is so tiny, so many strokes in a small area stopped his breathing like a SIDS death. So there's no question in my mind that vaccines can damage you. I myself am a vaccine-damaged individual. I had 4 vaccines in one day when I started working at a hospital for sick children. And they said...
Oh, as an adult?
As an adult.
Oh,
when I was already vaccinated my whole youth, the moment I became a sick children's hospital, they said, we got to revaccinate you for everything you've ever had in 1 week. And I got 18 fillings changed in my mouth the same week. Mercury poisoning, new dental plan, let's shine up your fillings, and vaccine that week. By the end of 10 days, I couldn't even think straight. And that's where I realized that we cannot continue to do one thing there. It should be not risky. Oh, another thing there shouldn't be not risky. Well, no, the additive risks and the additive risks and the additive risks of all of the environmental, the vaccination, the genetically modified food. We live in a totally different world than we did in the 1950s and 60s.
So, and really coming back to what she's holding here, we're bringing basically your body back to nature, back to that magnetic field that everything thrives in.
Yeah.
And so
the perfect garden to grow in.
There was one thing I was curious about, since you touched on mercury and the metals play such a huge part in this. And I've been so fascinated by the metal detox programs in the AMP Coil. And I don't fully understand like how a frequency can render a metal inert or get a metal out. Does that have to do with the polarity and the electric charge on the metal?
Yeah, you're right. So when metals are neutral, they're not harmful. When they're ionized into their positive charge or negative charge state, they cling to things like a Velcro strip. So mercury 3+ is dangerous. So when we put the AMP coil in here and we deliver hydrogen, which is electrons, 1 electron jumps on the 3+, making it 2+ mercury. 2+ turns into 1+ mercury. 1+ mercury turns into neutral mercury. Now that's free to leave. There's no charge on it, so it passes through the
so it
gates.
doesn't bind to tissue.
Yeah,
and things
it's got no shackles on it, so it goes out of the gates easy. So by constantly filling the body with excessive nitrogen or hydrogen, meaning in the form of music has been proven to deliver hydrogen. Did you know that?
Wow, no,
it's an antioxidant, the perfect antioxidant.
That's crazy.
Which is a 1 electron per 1 hydrogen, but hydrogen can be stacked with 2 extra electrons and carry a piggyback one and donate an extra. So this is what we put in our primer. Hydrogen, oxygen, so that you've got enough of the raw materials of electricity to dump into the body. And I want to say one last thing. A body with a 70 millivolt difference between inside and out, where you have enough energy in the gates to hold the perimeter of the castle, you have a totally healthy body. When the gates drop from 70 millivolts to 40 millivolts and there's no electrical field, cancer grows in the hole. So the goal of AMP Coil is not to cure cancer, but to just keep the castle walls intact and the minerals that keep the form of the castle. And that way, your body has a chance of anti-aging because chromosomes are made of a chromosome wound over a hydrogen axle. So we keep winding your chromosomes tighter so we get anti-aging out of the AMP Coil.
Mm-hmm. And I'll share one last story. And that is my wife's mother. She's just now 75 and very arthritic till a couple years ago. We gave her one of the first AMP coils. And after about 2 weeks of feeling like, okay, I can't go out and do all these things I love anymore. I'm not going to be able to hike. I'm not going to just be able to go out on bike rides. It's just too unpleasant. So I guess that's just that part of my life is done. We gave her an AMP coil, showed her some of the programs to use. Within a couple of weeks, she calls us and says, I'm feeling really good, and so good that I think I'm adding 10 years of quality life back onto my life. So much that literally on the beach here last year in Tahoe, she sat down with my wife and said, I'm planning to hike to base camp on Mount Everest, and I want you to come with me. And they went.
No way.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was shocked
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I had an interesting experience with the metals, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to touch on it. You know, as I said, when I did my gut labs, I don't know that I really worked on that specifically with the amp coil, but I also have always been working on getting my metals down. The one that was most high for me was lead, and then some mercury and a couple little arsenic, a couple other things, but mostly it was the lead. Now, when I did blood labs last year, and I did a challenge urine test, which means you instigate, the metals out. You pee, then you take some stuff that instigates the metals and turns them loose, and then you check that for people listening. I'm sure you guys know what that is. Metals came out high. Now, I wanted to do an isolated test, and this is what sucks about being a biohacker like me. I wanted to just do the amp coil and run all of the programs for metals and then retest again and see what I came up with. Unfortunately, I wasn't that patient. So I did a 30-day high-dose niacin where you escalate your niacin intake and sauna detox, something brought to popularity by L. Ron Hubbard, interestingly enough. But I did this detox, and I just did a new metals test, and all of my metals numbers are crazy lower. I mean, within absolutely safe levels, and the lead was pretty off the charts before. So very interesting. I definitely did run metals programs. Now, I can't unequivocally say that it was just this, but in conjunction, for sure. And even with the gut, a lot of the stuff I had before is gone.
Yeah.
There's just some things.
And your niacin supported your liver in that exodus.
Oh, okay.
Right?
I don't even know how it works. I just read that it works and I try it. I make sure it's safe. The thing is, and anyone listening, don't just take a bunch of niacin and go jump into sauna. There's a whole protocol you have to follow, and you have to mega dose all of these fat soluble vitamins that you're sweating out. And it's a whole thing. But
and Luke, I just want to say that deep gratitude for what you do. Since we did this interview with you last year, the people that have come to us that decided to go on this path to use our technology, a lot of them are because of how you do your interviews. And it's just beautiful because it makes it so easy to get our message out there in a way that people are really looking for. And I just want to thank you.
Oh man, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean,
thanks for helping bring music and medicine together.
Yeah.
And,
like you, Deborah, I'm a musician too,
Yeah.
so I think that's one of the things that resonated and about this technology. But honestly, it's like your experience, Aaron, where you're suffering and then you find a solution, and that sets this fire inside, this burning desire to help other people. And my first experience with that was, of course, as I've kind of shared with you guys, is getting sober and going like, oh my God, I don't have to be a slave to some little baggie of shit that I'm chasing around all day. I mean, just to live free of that and alcohol and all of the drama that comes along with it. I devoted my life to helping other people recover. But then along the way, I found there's a lot more to it than that. Like
the worst part about it is we blame the addict when in fact the parasites are the addict, not the man. So I
wish
think
someone had told me that at 26.
We got to change that mentality that the addict is the victim and to be blaming them and shaming them because they're suffering. And no one's understanding, not the medical community realizing that they could be dewormed in a few weeks and be off the morphine. And that's a travesty that allows thousands and thousands of suicides that could be prevented in our North American culture right now. And that's got to stop. And so the AMCOIL was designed as a non-narcotic pain biofeedback. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize is that the pain is psychological, emotional, mental, physical, parasitic. And you can't just go to one place and get one little thing done and have the whole thing fixed.
This is the
You got
story.
to fix the integration. That's why
Totally.
AMCOIL is truly an integrated orchestra of opportunities. And it's got enough of a repertoire of library songs, 3 of the top big ones voice guided and the rest restorative and rejuvenative, that you can decide on how fast and furious you want to detox yourself, how much peak performance you want. And God bless you that you build the muscle with repetitive practice so that you can get somewhere over time, because you can't shoot everything with a silver bullet on one shot. You have to groom the soil in your garden.
Well, this is what I found as I started to work on this stuff within myself 22 years ago, is you get over one little hump. For me, it was the sobriety. I think, oh man, I'm going to help people discover this. But then you discover all these underlying causes. And then I find devices, expert supplements, and things like that. And thank you for what you said, Aaron, but in having the podcast, I can't find something like this and not tell people.
Mhm.
And sometimes I feel a little weird because it's like, here we're on video, I have the amp coil here, and it's like an amp coil commercial or something. I want people to understand that I don't do things to make a commercial. I do things because I can't stand for people to not know about it.
It's not a it's not a commercial. It's a movement.
Yeah,
it's a paradigm shift away from disease care to self-care.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really the message that you're helping us get out, is that look at how many things you've done to try and help yourself. But you're a guy who's extremely intelligent, smart, with resources. There's a lot more people out there that do not have your smarts, your intelligence, your resources, or your access. And there's mothers who are exhausted. Today, I was so moved to tears when that woman on the stage said, I'm practically suicidal and my husband is too. And you've given us our lives back, our farm back. You know, like, we're giving people back a life that they can actually say is their own again, rather than being a dependent on being a bedridden and have others affecting them, or, you know, their illness affecting a whole family, say. So it's not just for the individual. It really helps the collective. So we're talking today about calm unity, the unity of yourself and the unity of your community.
Yeah.
We this is why we want you to share this. So we're so grateful for you sharing.
Oh, me too. Me too. And as you guys know, I'll be interviewing Arthur and Jackie from Wellness for Humanity, the nonprofit that helps people get this technology. So it's a really...
We've been donating a part proceeds to their charity. And so today we were saying on stage, Arthur said, thank you to the audience. You don't even know that you've contributed to our foundation. And you're helping our awareness of that foundation that's contributing back to us. So it's a give and a take, so much more of a sharing and a caring kind of mentality that we're trying to bring forward here. We need to share for our fellow man and care with our fellow man.
It's all about paying it forward.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point to end on.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys so much. And I'm so glad that you were able to make it, Deborah. Like, you have such a wealth of knowledge. I'm just fascinated with the stuff you talk about. And thanks for coming back.
Let's
Aaron.
get a big Amco concert going next. Get the musicians involved.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Let's rig the speakers into the house and have all the autistic children go normal in one concert. How about that?
Right.
All the Parkinson's or all the diabetic concert or whatever, and you have a fundraiser, but then you do something to them while they're there. Don't just talk about it. Don't just fundraise it. Fix it while they're there.
Well, you know, last year, I don't know if you're aware of this. I know Aaron is, but we did the Lead with Love event in Aspen, and Arthur and I led a meditation with a bunch of coils.
Oh, yeah.
And people didn't even know what it was, but they came into that room and everyone was just entrained.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I lead meditations a lot for people that are, you know, at conferences. Everyone's like all hyper usually, but people came in that room and it was so easy to lead that group.
There's
because
the downbeat.
Yeah.
The natural downbeat of...
Yeah. We literally just got invited to a giant pyramid in Burning Man, and we had 5 amp coils.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, in a big pyramid, in each corner, one in the middle.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was profound.
Can you imagine the energy of 0 point energy shooting up the consciousness of that?
Wow.
This is 0 point energy, which means anything is possible. That is the key, where the intention of the user is more critical than anything, because your intention to heal yourself is what you're saying. I'm taking the time for me, and that intention is heard within the universal call for help within oneself.
Awesome. All right, you guys.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks so much for joining me. I'm glad we got to take this deep
Big
dive.
love,
We'll
man.
do it again.
Big love.
Cheers.
Thanks.
All right, there we go, you guys. We made it through another episode of the Lifestylist Podcast, and I'm sitting here kind of laughing as I review the bullet points of this episode, you know. So the way I do this, by the way, to just give you some of the secret sauce, is I record the interviews, and then my amazing production team at Podcast Masters listens to the interviews, writes the show notes, writes the bullet points, and then I go back and record the intros and outros after that. And sometimes it's like a month or 2 or even 3 or 4 months later. It's kind of weird. So I always kind of reminisce as I'm doing the outros and stuff here. Like, oh, yeah, I remember when we talked about this and that. And I try to imagine what it's like for you as the listener to be hearing this information. Because when I do the interview, sometimes my mind is just so blown. Like, I didn't know any of this stuff about how, you know, people go crazy on the full moon and how parasites eat heavy metals. And it just, you know, all this weird stuff that goes on a cellular level in the body. And so I learned so much in this interview, and I can't wait to go back and listen to this one. I don't listen to all my shows, but the ones that are really dense in information, I tend to. So this will definitely be one that I'll go back as a super fan of our guest, not of myself. Trust me, I don't need to hear myself talk. It's mortifying sitting here on the mic, to be honest, like talking to yourself, doing the intros and outros. If you're a podcaster, you know what I'm saying? That's like not the fun part. But you got to do it. You know why we got to do it? Because I have to thank you and I have to thank our sponsors. This week we had 3 fantastic sponsors, and I doubt that my sponsors ever get to the end of the show and listen to the outro plugs, as they're called. But I just want to say that I really appreciate them. You know, without getting some coin from these companies, this podcast would not exist. And if you guys didn't trust me and trust the brands that I represent and go buy their stuff, which is always the best of the best, guaranteed, then the show can't happen. So you're part of that system. You're part of that relationship. And you know, growing up in the 70s and 80s when you didn't have a choice but to watch commercials on TV unless you got off your ass and like changed the channel manually. I hate commercials, and I really resisted, you know, putting promos on the show, and I tried to find a way to do it without doing that. And I'm sorry, there's no way. I got people to pay, video editors, audio editors, graphic designers, people to run the website. It becomes kind of a thing, you know, if you want to do it right. And I really value the production quality on the show. That's something I wanted to do from the beginning. I didn't want to have, and no offense to people that just like record a whole podcast on their iPhone. I'm sure there's some great shows like that, but I wanted like a high quality radio mic that sounds like this. You know, I wanted it to be dope and legit. I wanted it to be like old school radio show, but you know, less stuffy and not beholden to whack conservative censoring corporate interest. You know, my advertisers, I don't like call them that, let's say my sponsors, they let me say whatever I want. So at least up until now, but I try not to be too controversial. Anyway, God damn it, let's talk about these sponsors. I love you guys. If you ever hear this, thank you so much, especially one of my newer ones, but an old time company that I've been working with. Well, not working with, how do I say this? I've been a customer of for a long time, of Thrive Market. You can go to thrivemarket.com/Luke. And if you use that URL, you'll automatically save 25% off your first order, plus free shipping and a free 30-day trial offer. Now, here's the deal, though. That's 25% off. But, dude, Thrive Market is already, 30, 40% off of what you would pay at Whole Foods or a fancy store like Erewhon here in LA. This is where I get all of my like dry goods, coconut oil, nuts, seeds, beef jerky. I mean, now they actually have a deli section too. I haven't ordered any of the meat yet, but this is like almond butter, you know, all that kind of stuff that you end up just spending bank on at the store. It is all so deeply discounted. It's not a scam. It's like, it's the real deal. In fact, if you go on YouTube and search Luke Story Thrive Market, there's this video where I show you everything that I personally shop for there. And I do an unboxing where I like compare prices. Okay, I got this sauerkraut for $4. Normally it's $8. You know, I go through each one. It's pretty interesting, I think, if you're trying to learn how to shop and eat healthy and eat organic. I literally show you every single item that I buy that has worked for me. So that's thrivemarket.com/Luke. And if you use that URL, you get 25% off. Then we've got Altera Pure. Oh man, I love these guys. I always love plugging Altera Pure because they're so close to my heart. I sleep on them or with them every night. They make the most amazing organic sheets and bedding, and just super, super legit. So soft, so high quality, very ecologically sound. They take care of the people that make these fabrics. It's like 100% transparency. It's the company of the future. This is the type of company that's going to survive as the public becomes more ecologically aware, socially aware, and as companies need to be more transparent. You know, I'm the geek that calls up companies is like, oh, really? Your cotton's organic? Well, do you treat it with flame retardants? And then they hang up on me. Altera Pure does not hang up on me. They answer all my questions. I grilled them before I ran their promos on the show, and they passed with flying colors. If you want to get some badass sheets that don't kill you, go to alterapure.com. If you enter the code Lifestylist, that's one word, all lowercase, Lifestylist, you will save 15% off these already, I think, way underpriced, badass organic sheets. Alterapure.com. The code is Lifestylist. Then we've got our shroomers, our old Finnish shroom buddies, Four Sigmatic. That's foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. You can use the code Luke Story over there and save 15% off the most delicious and effective medicinal mushrooms and herbs. They come in little packets. I'm sure 90% of you guys already eat them. Here's some anecdotal evidence for you. About an hour ago, before I started recording, I was super smoked from being at Wim Hof all day today. Long day, big fires going on in LA. I'm breathing smoke. I don't know what the hell's going on. My throat's sore. Bad news bears over here. So I'm like, damn, I need to wake up. So what do? I go in the kitchen and I had some freshly brewed chaga tea from the actual like chunks of chaga. I just buy that off eBay. And then I boiled some of that up. My buddy Matt Maruka's over. Of my episode, Extreme Biohacking Millennial Edition, which, by the way, is my number one download of all time. So Maddie's over here with his raw optics glasses, and we're chilling after Wim Hof. I'm like, dude, I got to make some. So I made some chaga tea, and then I took 3 packets of the 4-sigmatic chaga extract and put that in there with some grass-fed butter and some bulletproof brain octane, and I made us like a great non-caffeinated, energizing, alkalizing tonic. So that's what I just drank before I recorded. It probably turned my teeth black, and then that sucks because teeth whitening is really bad for your teeth. So there you go. But it's badass. 4sigmatic.com/Luke Story. And then the last thing I got to say, and if you're still listening, that means you are a freaking diehard and I love you. But don't forget to catch this Friday's bonus episode about wellness for humanity, the nonprofit Angels of Lyme Disease with Arthur Franklin and Jackie Newlinger. That is going to be an amazing show, and it's the first nonprofit, the first like charitable episode I'm doing just to boost them up because they really help so many people that would otherwise not be able to be helped with that gnarliness known as Lyme disease. And then next Tuesday, we've got Carly Stein, and we party. We talk all about bees. That is a really fun and informative episode. So make sure you subscribe to the show. Share it with a friend. If you want to watch the live behind-the-scenes recordings, make sure to follow me on Instagram. If you look at my live feeds, I like all day today at the Wim Hof training, I was like doing live feeds, showing Wim, doing the ice baths, like the whole thing. I go to great lengths to share the discoveries that are helping me in my life on social media. And if you follow me, you get to join in on the fun. It's free. So there you go. Thanks for listening. I'll be back in your eardrums this Friday. This episode of the Lifestylist Podcast was produced by podcastmasters.net.